Sir, this counter is for real clients. That sentence alone flipped the switch. Leon Barrett stood still, both hands resting gently on the marble surface. So, not me? The woman behind the desk smiled. Tight, polite, practiced. You're free to wait with the rest of the general public. Over there. She gestured toward the crowded queue of regular customers under harsh fluorescent lighting. Then she turned her back. Tell us where you're watching from. Have you ever been turned away somewhere you paid for? Leon didn't move, didn't raise his voice, didn't tell her his name. He simply blinked once and said, 12 minutes. The woman paused. Excuse me? 12 minutes, Leon repeated quietly. That's how long it's going to take before someone realizes what just happened. She laughed, that condescending, barely there laugh. Sir, I'm calling security if you won't step away. And she did. A tall man in uniform appeared by the glass doors. Stern face, calm steps. The kind of guy who could escort a man out in 30 seconds without saying a word. Leon looked straight at him. Would you like to see my ID before you do that? He asked calmly. Sir, if you're not on the appointment list. I'm not, Leon said and smiled. But the building is. The security guard hesitated, just enough to shift the tone of the room. Across the lobby, two tellers exchanged glances. A woman by the entrance quietly lifted her phone, recording. The bank's priority clients room, once silent and exclusive, suddenly felt fragile. Leon slowly reached into the inner pocket of his blazer and pulled out a sleek black wallet. From it, he placed a metal card on the desk. It clinked against the surface, too heavy for plastic. The woman picked it up, frowning. It wasn't a name she recognized, but the logo, two interlocking gold hexagons, made her uneasy. She read the embossed text aloud. Barrett, Leon A. Her voice wavered. Wait. Leon stepped back slightly, checked his phone. 9:21 a.m. A silent notification blinked at the top. Flare override. Granted. Tier 1 ethical trigger armed. He tapped, ready. 18 minutes earlier, he'd walked into Seabrook and Langston's flagship Chicago branch wearing his favorite old sneakers and a charcoal hoodie under a blazer. No appointment, no assistant. Just Leon Barrett, 45 years old, founder of Quanticore Capital, and chief architect of FLAIR, the Federal Liquidity and Accountability Rating Engine, which governed the ethical risk scores of over 130 U.S. financial institutions. Most people in that room had no idea. They only saw the clothes, the shoes, the color of his skin. The lobby had felt familiar in a way he hadn't expected. Sterile marble, perfumed air, quiet tension. He'd grown up watching his mother get turned down by banks that didn't bother learning her name. Watching his father save for 15 years just to get denied a small business loan with no explanation. That memory didn't make him angry anymore. It made him strategic. And this morning, he wasn't just here to move money. He was here to observe. Flair had flagged Seabrook and Langston's ethics score twice in the last 90 days. Mostly small complaints, subtle red flags. Leon wanted to see for himself. He didn't need a viral video. He needed proof the system still failed the people it promised to serve. And right now, the system had just failed him. He looked down again at the counter, where the priority client specialist still refused to meet his eye. The security guard hesitated by the velvet rope, now unsure of his role. Leon's phone buzzed again. Compliance alert issued. Behavioral bias detected. 9:24 a.m. Branch 044 triggered for Tier 1 ethics review. It had begun. Back at the desk, David Kirsch, the branch's client director, finally stepped in. His voice was calm, but his posture betrayed nerves. Mr. Barrett, can I assist you? Now you know who I am, Leon said evenly. David swallowed. I'd like to speak with your regional ethics liaison, Leon added, already knowing there wasn't one. Not yet. Across the building, terminals pinged. An internal email with the subject line, Urgent. Live ethics review. Flare. Level 1 flag. Branch 044 popped up on 14 screens. The woman behind the desk turned pale. The room's ambient music had stopped playing. A teller near the far wall closed their window early. Leon picked up his card, slid it back into his wallet. Then he took out his phone and opened the Flare dashboard. One tap. That's all it would take. But he didn't tap. Not yet. Because this wasn't about a personal insult. This was about what the system allowed when it thought no one important was watching. He glanced at the time. 9:26 a.m. He had 6 minutes left. The woman behind the counter finally looked up, her voice a whisper. I didn't know. Leon smiled once, not unkindly. You weren't supposed to. That's why it works. He walked away from the counter, not escorted, not shamed. Behind him, security didn't follow. The cameras did. And in 6 minutes, so would every major financial oversight body in the country. By the time Leon stepped into the elevator, no one in the lobby dared make eye contact. The door slid shut with a soft ding, and for the first time that morning, he exhaled. Not from anger, from precision. The kind of breath you take after lighting the fuse before the explosion. He tapped the button for the executive access level, a floor few people at Seabrook and Langston even knew existed. As the elevator rose, he checked the time, 9:27 a.m., 5 minutes left. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a secure tablet. Fingerprint, retinal scan, code entry. The screen came alive with the familiar interface of Flare, the federal liquidity and accountability rating engine he'd helped design 6 years ago. It was meant to be a quiet solution to a loud problem. What happens when the people running the system no longer fear being watched? Now, it was time to show them they were. 5 years ago, Seabrook and Langston was on the verge of collapse. Mismanaged lending portfolios, crumbling community trust. Their internal ethics score had fallen below 62, which at the time meant federal lending restrictions and public scrutiny. Leon had stepped in, not because he owed them anything, but because the collapse of a legacy bank like this would ripple through neighborhoods that couldn't afford to lose a single dollar. His firm, Quanticore, partnered with regulators to salvage the institution, but only on one condition. You let us build in a system that tracks you from the inside out. They had agreed, desperately. That system, Flare. Now, 5 years later, they had forgotten who handed them the pen when the industry was ready to write their obituary. Now, 9:29 a.m. Leon entered the empty executive suite on floor 31, the highest level, built for board members and dignitaries. The space was modern, quiet, floor-to-ceiling glass wrapping around the skyline of downtown Chicago. From here, he could see the exact sidewalk he'd walked in from, the same one his father once stood on, waiting in a line he was never invited to cross. He set his tablet on the table. Flare's live dashboard lit up like a Christmas tree. Ethical breach flag, active. Behavioral bias, confirmed by video and audio feed. Tier 1 override, Leon Barrett authorized. Seabrook and Langston's internal score had dropped to 59.2, 2 points lower, and their federal liquidity access would be suspended by algorithm. No hearing, no debate. And that was just the beginning. Leon opened the override panel. It required 3 biometric confirmations, all his. He completed each one, slowly, deliberately. Final step, a prompt that asked, "Do you wish to publish the Tier 1 ethics flag to external networks?" Yes, no. He didn't press yes, not yet. 9:30 a.m., 3 minutes left. Leon's phone buzzed. David Kim, Director of Ethics Operations, Flare, was calling. Leon answered with one word. "Watching?" Kim chuckled. "Oh, we're watching. The desk recording? Brutal. She didn't even blink before dismissing you." Leon said nothing. "You want us to initiate review protocol?" Kim asked. "Wait 3 more minutes," Leon replied. "Let's give them the benefit of awareness." Downstairs, 9:31 a.m. Back in the branch lobby, chaos had begun to swell. Quietly, emails pinged. Screens flickered with sudden access errors. A regional supervisor was on speakerphone in the back office shouting, "Who's triggering flare data at the source?" The woman who had dismissed Leon stood frozen at her desk, rereading the internal compliance alert over and over like a death sentence. David Kirsch tried to maintain order, but he was sweating through his shirt. He turned to security and asked, "Is he still in the building?" Security nodded slowly. "Executive floor." "Jesus," Kirsch whispered. "He's not just a client, he's the damn owner of the pipeline." 9:32 a.m., 1 minute left. Leon stood at the center of the glass-wrapped boardroom and finally spoke aloud, to no one but the room itself. 12 minutes. That's all it took for a system to reveal itself. He tapped, "Yes." Instantly, 720 MELMs and active liquidity agreements were flagged as non-compliant. 3 regional lending partners lost access to the Federal Reserve window. FDIC suspended 2 risk assessment APIs linked to Seabrook and Langston. Emails were dispatched to the offices of the Comptroller of the Currency and Senate Banking Committee. Leon watched it all cascade in real time. One screen after another updated with red warning bars. And still, no one had called him directly to apologize. That, he thought, was telling. 9:33 a.m. The system goes public. Flair's public-facing dashboard updated the bank's ethics rating from 84.3 to 58.9. Every journalist on the national finance beat had alerts tied to that metric. They got the ping. Breaking: Seabrook and Langston ethics rating plunges after Tier 1 violation. Headlines began forming before anyone at the bank even realized what hit them. Leon watched from above. He took one last glance at the lobby down below, where phones buzzed, brows furrowed, and panic spread like ink in water. Then he turned off the screen and zipped up his bag. He'd made his point. But the story? It was just beginning. Leon stepped out of the elevator, calm as ever, and the lobby practically stopped breathing. Phones were still ringing. Compliance emails still pinged across terminals. But the people, they were frozen, watching, processing. No one had expected him to return. At least not like this. He walked the same path he had 20 minutes earlier. Same floor, same marble, same counter. But now, the air around him felt charged, like the quiet hum before a thunderclap. The same woman at the priority client's desk stood stiff behind her terminal. Her lips were slightly parted, but no words came out. Leon's steps were unhurried. Intentional. Not a performance, just precision. He didn't stop at the desk. Instead, he turned to David Kirsch, who stood near the corner of the lobby, phone in one hand. His tie now loosened and shirt slightly soaked through at the chest. David looked like a man trying to keep the roof from caving in with both hands. Leon's tone was level. "You still on hold?" David blinked. No, I just got off." Leon nodded. "Good, because we're out of time." Across the lobby, 2 junior associates who hadn't even seen the first half of what happened suddenly realized who he was. Their eyes widened. One of them whispered something to the other. The second pulled out their phone and started recording, almost unconsciously. Leon didn't notice or didn't care. He pulled out his phone, tapped once. A single notification appeared. Flare. Ethics violation published. Public Tier 1, status confirmed. He looked up. "You'll want to speak to your legal team before noon," he said to David. "They'll have questions about the $7 and $20 million liquidity freeze and the 3 lending partners who just backed out." David's mouth opened, but again, no words. "You're going to have a conference call with your CEO, 2 federal monitors, and probably the FDIC, maybe the Fed. I'd suggest you cancel lunch." Leon paused. "Also, they're going to ask how this started, and you're going to say it began here, at this counter, with your team." David looked toward the desk, where the woman who had dismissed Leon was still standing, shoulders drawn tight, like a child waiting to be scolded. Leon didn't say her name. He didn't need to. Everyone already knew. Just then, the front door of the bank swung open. A woman in a black blazer strode in carrying a camera and a press badge. Andrea Park, senior correspondent for a national finance outlet. She was streaming live on social. She turned to face the lobby, her phone raised. "That man," she said to her audience, "is Leon Barrett, the creator of the Flare system. The man who froze nearly $1 billion in credit today, from the inside of the bank that tried to deny him service." David's shoulders sank. Leon simply turned back to the center of the room. Behind him, a teller quietly flipped their sign from open to closed. The entire front row of clients had stopped pretending to wait. They were just watching now, some standing, some filming, none speaking. The security guard who had approached Leon earlier gave a soft nod as their eyes met. Half an apology, half admiration. Leon returned the nod. No words needed. He checked his watch. 9:43 a.m. It had only been 12 minutes since the woman at the counter told him he didn't belong. 12 minutes to go from irrelevant to indispensable. He tapped another number on his phone. Patricia Wong answered on the second ring. "Update? Public dashboards are live," she said. "Ethics score went from 84 to 58.9. Fed just pulled back loan clearance. 3 other banks are flagging partnership risk. CNN and Reuters both confirmed the story." Leon glanced up. "And the CEO?" "He sent a text. Wants to speak privately." Leon almost smiled. He didn't reply to Patricia right away. Instead, he looked back to the woman at the counter. She was holding her hands together tightly. Her mouth moved slightly, trying to form an apology she couldn't quite find. Leon took a breath. "I don't need an apology," he said quietly, almost to himself. The woman looked startled. She hadn't spoken yet. "You didn't make a mistake," Leon continued. "You revealed a system, one you were trained by, one you probably didn't even know you were upholding until it was too late." She swallowed hard. "I never meant—" "You never had to," he said. "That's the point." And then he walked, not away from her, through the building, through the system she thought she understood. As he moved toward the exit, the entire lobby watched. No one stopped him. No one asked questions. Outside, a small crowd had gathered near the glass. Some with phones pressed to the window, others just trying to understand the moment. Leon pushed open the door and stepped into the sunlight. For a moment, the building behind him seemed to hold its breath. Then, the notifications hit. Barrett Protocol proposed in emergency session, Senate Banking Committee. Ethics-based lending standards, international review. Banks begin voluntary internal audits after Barrett flag. He looked down at his phone one last time. One more ping. A final message from Patricia. "We flipped the switch, Leon. They're calling it the Barrett Standard." He slid the phone into his pocket. Didn't smile. Didn't need to. Behind him, Seabrook and Langston was already rewriting its future. And this time, the system knew exactly who had flipped the lights on. Patricia Wong stood in her office, staring at 3 blinking monitors. She wasn't a dramatic person, rarely raised her voice, never acted out of emotion. But even she had to admit, this is unprecedented. The live ethics feed was lighting up like a Christmas tree, not just for Seabrook and Langston, but across 5 major institutions. The moment Leon Barrett's Tier 1 trigger went public, all their connected vendors, insurers, auditors, compliance reviewers, began flagging risk across the network. And the timing? Perfect. Today was the release date of Flare 2.0, the real-time surveillance module that included cross-sector ethics interlocks. For months, Leon and Patricia had debated whether to launch the feature quietly. Now, it was live, loud, and in the spotlight. 10:11 a.m., in a private boardroom, Manhattan. At Seabrook and Langston's corporate headquarters, CEO Martin Langston was halfway through his coffee when he got the alert. The push notification was cold and precise. Flagged. Tier 1 discriminatory incident at flagship branch. Credit freeze active. CEO review required. Martin blinked. He opened the report. The name, Leon Barrett, was in the first line, in bold. And right below it? Subject holds final authentication authority over Flare Tier 1 enforcement. Incident verified via biometric signature and cross-device validation. Martin dropped his coffee. Across the street. Media Response Center. Andrea Park's live stream had hit 3.2 million views in 27 minutes. And she wasn't stopping. She now stood in front of the bank's glass facade, calmly listing facts. The man denied service this morning wasn't just a customer. He was the architect of the very system now auditing the bank. His one action exposed racial bias, procedural failure, and ethics code breach in real time. The public ate it up. In the comments, thousands were asking, why was he treated like that? Would this happen to a white man in a suit? How many other banks do this and get away with it? The story was no longer about Leon. It was about everyone watching. Leon's office, Chicago. Leon sat at his desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled. Calm. The lights on his wall monitor showed 4 colors: green, yellow, red, and gray. Gray meant dormant. One of the banks had voluntarily frozen their own outbound transactions, likely trying to prevent exposure. Smart. Too late. He pressed a button. Patricia's face appeared on the side screen. "They're spinning now," she said. "Langston's legal team just issued a press release." Leon raised an eyebrow. "Already?" She nodded. "They're calling it a misunderstanding involving an unnamed contractor." He didn't laugh. He didn't need to. "You want to respond?" she asked. "No, not yet," he said. "Let them guess what happens next." 10:45 a.m. Langston's emergency meeting. Martin Langston sat with 5 executives around a long glass table. Everyone had a copy of the internal risk audit in front of them. No one touched it. The head of legal broke the silence. "This is actionable, Martin. Flair doesn't just flag, it documents. That video from the lobby is real-time synced with the enforcement server." "What are our options?" Martin asked. The CFO looked grim. "We have $720 million in revolving credit exposed. If we don't reverse the freeze by noon, we'll miss derivative settlements. If we miss settlements, our rating drops." Martin rubbed his eyes. "We're not just looking at ethics violations," someone else added. "We're looking at a liquidity death spiral. And all because a desk clerk decided a black man didn't belong," the general counsel muttered. Silence. Then Martin asked, "What's the play?" The room looked at each other. No one spoke, until the youngest voice at the table, a junior diversity officer named Darren, cleared his throat. "There is one play," Darren said. Martin turned to him. "We call him." 11:02 a.m. Leon's office. His phone buzzed. Patricia's voice came over the intercom. "It's Langston." Leon looked at the screen. Didn't blink. "Put him through." The line clicked. Martin's voice was tense, careful. "Mr. Barrett, I want to begin by saying—" "You're not on speaker," Leon interrupted, "and I'm recording." Martin paused. "Of course." Leon waited. Martin finally spoke. "We want to make this right." Leon didn't smile. "Do you?" There was a silence. Not awkward, but charged. Martin continued. "We're willing to issue a formal apology. On video. I'm prepared to announce immediate policy retraining." Leon leaned back in his chair. "You don't need to do that for me," he said. Martin hesitated. "Then what do you want?" And Leon answered clearly. "I want you to make sure the next black man who walks into any one of your branches isn't asked if he belongs there." Martin said nothing. Leon continued, slower now. "I want your metrics. I want your bias audit published. I want to see your internal promotion data by race. I want your client retention numbers split by zip code. I want the faces of every board member who signed off on your existing culture." "You're asking for—" "I'm not asking." 11:18 a.m. Online response. Seabrook and Langston's apology video dropped on social. It looked clean, well lit, carefully rehearsed. But the comments weren't buying it. Too little, too late. Why does it always take public shame for change? Where's the woman who said, "You don't look like you bank here"? In the background, something else was building. Dozens of customers had started withdrawing funds. Some local influencers publicly posted their account closures. The real impact wasn't media. It was trust. And once that evaporated, no freeze could fix it. 11:45 a.m. At home, Leon's living room. His daughter, Melina, was waiting with lunch. She'd seen the news. "You made the system blink," she said, handing him a sandwich. He smiled. "No, I just reminded it that I exist." She paused. "Do you think they'll change?" He didn't answer right away. Then finally, he said, "Maybe not today, but now they don't get to pretend anymore." She nodded, quiet. He looked out the window, and for the first time that day, he let himself exhale. Leon didn't expect the call from Congress to come that quickly. He was standing in his garden, watering a row of tomatoes he rarely had time to tend. The sun was just starting to warm the stone tiles beneath his feet when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Washington, D.C. area code. He let it ring once more, then picked up. "Barrett. Mr. Barrett, this is Rachel Kim with the Senate Committee on Financial Ethics. Are you available to speak with Senator Donnelly this afternoon regarding yesterday's flare escalation?" He paused. "Tell him I'll be there in person. 2:42 p.m. Rayburn House office building. Leon adjusted his tie and stepped into a room that had hosted decades of uncomfortable conversations. Whistleblowers, CEOs, union reps, war veterans. And now, him. There were cameras. Not many, but enough. The public hearing wasn't scheduled yet. This was a closed session. Informal, they said. But Leon knew the tone. The moment a black man makes a billion-dollar system pause, it never stays informal for long. Senator Donnelly greeted him with a stiff smile. "Mr. Barrett, thank you for making time. This isn't a formal deposition, but we'd like to understand how something like this," he tapped a report, "can unfold in 12 minutes without anyone at the Fed being looped in until it's too late." Leon sat. "It wasn't too late," he said simply. Donnelly blinked. "Excuse me?" It was 12 minutes too fast for the old system, exactly on time for the new one. For the next hour, Leon laid it out. Not defensively, not boastfully, just facts. Flare's Tier 1 escalation wasn't a glitch. It was a deliberate, documented protocol, activated under precise conditions. Every institution that agreed to Flare integration had signed off on those conditions, including Seabrook and Langston 2 years ago. The metrics weren't subjective. The system didn't feel racism. It measured actions, who was served, who was ignored, and what happened next. Most importantly, the freeze didn't just punish Seabrook. It exposed a network of passive partners, institutions that silently benefited from unethical treatment. Leon folded his hands. This wasn't about catching a bank in the act. This was about showing how many others were willing to keep doing business with them after the act. Senator Ruiz, sitting 3 seats down, leaned forward. "So what now?" Leon looked her in the eye. "Now you decide if ethics is a checklist, or if it's the price of doing business in this country." Meanwhile, social media response. The hashtag #HadBarrettStandard was trending in 11 countries. Clips of the bank lobby circulated faster than any official statement. A moment where Leon didn't yell, didn't point, didn't even name names. Just looked a woman in the eye and told her, "You revealed a system." It resonated deeper than outrage. Even conservatives who normally dismissed ethics enforcement as wokeness theater found themselves quietly admitting, he didn't cancel anyone. He just forced them to look in a mirror. Several black entrepreneurs posted their own stories. Videos flooded in. A founder denied a business loan with no explanation. A woman told to speak to someone from the branch near her neighborhood. A retiree asked if he was dropping something off for his employer. Suddenly, Flare wasn't a system. It was proof. That night, in a Midwestern living room, Margaret Ellis, 74, sat in front of her old box TV, remote in hand. Her eyes stayed fixed on the segment replaying Leon's quiet confrontation. She'd banked at Seabrook and Langston for 31 years, never thought anything of the little comments. "You're early for appointment day. Let's get your paperwork from the community branch." Now she realized she had never been served without being reminded of where she came from. She picked up her phone. It shook in her hand. She opened the banking app and closed her account. Then she called her granddaughter and whispered, "I think I just finally stood up for myself." Next morning, media frenzy. CNN ran a segment called "The Quiet Power of Leon Barrett." MSNBC labeled him the anti-scandal CEO. Fox News tried to avoid saying his name, but still ran a panel on ethical overreach. But no one could argue with the numbers. Over $1.1 billion in credit partnerships had been voluntarily paused across 4 banks. Seabrook's consumer trust score dropped 38% in 24 hours. The Flare platform had received 71 new enrollment requests, including 2 Fortune 100 companies. And then came the bombshell. Thursday, Senate floor proposal. Senator Donnelly took to the floor with a bipartisan draft. It was called the Barrett Disclosure Act. A simple mandate: any financial institution partnering with a federal lender must disclose its ethics violation metrics quarterly, including discrimination triggers, client incident reports, and resolution rates. Private banks, public banks, investment groups. Doesn't matter. If you want the government's trust, you show your receipts. At Leon's office, that same day, Patricia walked in with a grin. "Barrett Disclosure Act. It's live." Leon looked up from his desk. "Did they change the name?" "No. You're officially in the congressional record." He smirked. "My dad would have hated that." She raised an eyebrow. "Too political?" He shook his head. "Too slow." He'd say, "They waited until someone with power was the one humiliated." Patricia nodded. Leon leaned back, quiet for a beat. Then he said softly, "If that's what it took, I'll live with it." In the final minutes of the chapter, Leon got a letter, handwritten, no return address. Inside was a photo, black and white, dated 1967. 3 men in suits, standing outside a small community bank. One of them looked just like Leon, his grandfather. On the back, one line: "They turned him away too." He didn't have a flare system, but now, you do. Leon held the photo in his hands a long time. He didn't speak, didn't cry. But for the first time since the incident, he closed his office door and let silence have its space. Leon's phone buzzed just past midnight. It was Patricia. "You're not gonna believe this," she said, her voice half whisper, half shock. "Someone leaked the internal audit." He sat up in bed, still fully dressed. Sleep hadn't come easily this week. Seabrook's audit? All of it. Their internal hiring metrics, promotion rates, client service distribution by zip code, even bias training logs. Source? Anonymous. But it's real. The files are everywhere. Reddit, Discord, even a TikTok thread breaking it down slide by slide. Leon didn't say anything for a moment. Then it's no longer about me. 8:11 a.m. Seabrook and Langston headquarters. The boardroom was silent. The leaked audit had confirmed what many already suspected, but never had the data to prove. Black and Latino clients were 70% more likely to be referred to a local branch, even when meeting national wealth thresholds. Women of color made up only 3% of upper management, despite representing 49% of entry-level hires. Bias training? Implemented but not enforced. 62% of staff skipped the mandatory sessions with no consequence. Worse, the system hadn't just failed passively, it had protected itself. False metrics, beautified reports to investors. One email even read, "Don't spook donors with too many black faces in senior VP slots. Stick with what looks stable." There was no coming back from that. Martin Langston, the CEO, looked 10 years older than he had 48 hours ago. "We're past PR cleanup," his COO said flatly. "This is triage." Meanwhile, across America, the audit triggered a domino effect. Customers left in waves, not just from Seabrook, but from any bank that looked, sounded, or acted like them. Hashtags took over again. We deserve better. Pull the receipts. And the one that stuck hardest? Flip the lights. That phrase, something Leon said days ago, had become a rallying cry. Mothers painted it on signs at protests. Teens etched it on locker doors. A jazz musician in Atlanta released a spoken word track titled "Lights Flipped, Now What?" 11:33 a.m. Leon's office. Leon watched a video on his phone. A 12-year-old girl testifying at her school board about why her mom closed their bank account. She said if Mr. Barrett can flip the lights, we can close the door. And if enough doors close, maybe they'll listen. He swallowed hard. There was something happening now that no legislation, no press release, no executive power could manufacture. Grassroots momentum. This wasn't about one bank. It was about how many other places let it happen. Quietly, professionally, with a smile. Patricia walked in. "You ready?" "For what?" "They just invited you to keynote the ethics summit in DC next week." Leon raised an eyebrow. "Thought I wasn't formal enough for them." Apparently, they want real now. That evening, emergency board meeting at Seabrook, Langston stepped down. He didn't cry, didn't explain, just read from a card. Sometimes leadership means stepping forward. Sometimes it means stepping out of the way. I failed to see what was right in front of me, and that failure cost us our clients, our credibility, and our conscience. His resignation hit every outlet within minutes. But what followed hit harder. Seabrook's ethics rating, once protected by clever metrics and clean marketing, was officially downgraded to non-compliant by 3 major governance bodies. Their federal contract bids were suspended. Their investment grade rating was under review, and the Barrett Disclosure Act, now fast-tracked, would soon make their entire data history public. The next day, a coffee shop in Harlem. Leon sat across from Aisha Nkrumah, a fintech founder from Brooklyn who'd been quietly building a challenger bank for years. "This is your moment," he told her. "It's not my name people are chanting," she replied. "It's the feeling they've waited decades for." Someone stood up and the wall cracked. She slid over a tablet. "Here's our model. Community first, transparent metrics, profit sharing with local programs. You've got the network, we've got the tech. Let's flip more than the lights, Leon." He looked at the screen, then at her. "Let's flip the blueprint." 48 hours later. At the Ethics Summit, DC Leon stood at the podium, thousands watching in person and online. He didn't wear a fancy tie, didn't open with a quote, just a simple sentence. "They told me I didn't look like I banked there." A beat of silence. "And I didn't. I built the system they banked on, and I wasn't supposed to be seen." He walked them through the events of the week, not with blame, but with clarity. He didn't name names, didn't point fingers. He pointed up, to the system, and inward, to the room. "The real scandal isn't what happened to me. It's that it could have happened to any of you, and no one would have believed it until now." He ended with 5 words. "Now that the lights are on," then looked directly into the camera. "What will you do?" Leon didn't plan to attend the investor town hall. It was optional, off the record. And after a week like this, no one would have blamed him for staying home. But something told him to go. Not for the cameras, not for the headlines, just to see who showed up and who didn't. 5:42 p.m. Midtown Manhattan, private club room. The room buzzed with tension disguised as civility. Champagne glasses clinked politely. Hedge fund managers, private equity execs, and ESG portfolio directors hovered near heat lamps, trading cautious half-smiles like currency. Patricia leaned toward Leon. "Half these people hated Flair 3 months ago. The other half just didn't return your calls." Leon scanned the room, not looking for validation, just curiosity. Because now that the system was cracked open, everyone had to pick a side. They began with the usual: performance metrics, future expansions, cost-to-risk ratios. Leon listened patiently, until someone asked the question he knew was coming. Leon, with this much disruption tied to ethics scoring, how do you expect investors to feel safe? He set his glass down. Safe for who? The room stilled. Let me ask it another way, Leon continued. Are you asking how to protect investors from unethical companies? Or how to protect unethical companies from being exposed? Silence. A long one. He walked to the whiteboard near the side table and picked up a marker. Let's do a quick experiment. Show of hands. How many of you have portfolio rules against investing in companies that break child labor laws? Most hands went up. Great. Now, how many have policies against companies that discriminate in their hiring practices? Fewer hands. Okay, now, how many of your firms audit for racial bias in client-facing services? Not just internal DEI reports. I mean real-world service impact. A few hands, hesitant. See the gap? He circled the whiteboard. That's where flair lives. In the space between what you say you believe and what you're willing to measure. Someone coughed, then muttered, half joke, half challenge. Sounds idealistic. Leon smiled. Not mockingly, just tired. Only to the ones who haven't been on the other side of the desk. Then he turned to the crowd. Do you know what it's like to walk into a room where every line of code was funded by your money, every employee paid by your systems, and still be asked, are you lost? No one answered. So, he did. It feels like building the house and being mistaken for the janitor. A pause. Then a quiet voice from the back. A woman in a gray suit, eyes sharp. So what's next? What do you actually want us to do? Leon looked her way. I don't want you to believe in me. I want you to believe in metrics that don't protect comfort, but reflect impact. He clicked a remote. Behind him, the screen lit up. Introducing the Barrett score. Flashback. 2 months earlier, in a windowless office, Leon sat with a team of coders, ethicists, and economists. They weren't building a PR tool. They were constructing a new market language, one that rewarded dignity as heavily as it punished fraud. The Barrett score combined verified service interactions, client identity, blind data, resolution integrity, internal diversity versus customer demographic alignment. The result? A 0-100 scale that investors, regulators, and clients could use together to rate a company's ethical footprint in real-world transactions. We're not canceling companies, Leon said in that meeting. We're illuminating them. Back to the present. Investor room. The screen now showed sample dashboards. Banks, hotels, airlines, tech startups, each with a Barrett score overlay. Some green, some yellow, one red. These ratings won't be hidden behind compliance walls, Leon said. They'll be public, and they'll be tied to access. Federal partnerships, ESG eligibility, even consumer alerts. He let that sink in. You don't have to love the score. You just have to explain it to your clients, to your board, to the next generation. That's when something surprising happened. People began clapping, not all, but enough. The woman in gray stood again. You're saying dignity is now a market signal? Leon didn't blink. No, I'm saying it always was. We just didn't price it in until now. The next day, headlines, Bloomberg. The Barrett score is coming. Investors react to ethics disruption. Reuters. New gold standard for real-world accountability? Fortune. Flair, founder to launch Public Transparency Index. But the most unexpected headline came from Forbes. The Barrett Framework. Why every boardroom should be scared and ready. Later that night, in Leon's apartment. He sat on the balcony, lights of the city flickering below. Patricia texted, "You flipped the boardroom." He replied, "They flipped themselves. I just turned on the lights." Leon didn't expect the invitation from the Federal Oversight Committee. He wasn't a senator. He didn't lobby for votes. And yet, there it was. An official request for testimony. Subject: systemic financial bias in consumer banking. Witness Mr. Leon Barrett, founder of Flair and architect of the Barrett score. It wasn't just a hearing, it was a signal. Washington had seen enough public pressure to realize this wasn't going away quietly. The room was packed, not just politicians, cameras, students, former clients, retired tellers, and somewhere in the back, a woman with salt and pepper braids holding a sign that read, "I was denied a loan in '87. Thank you for finally caring." Leon sat straight, calm, not defiant, anchored. The committee chair, a white congressman from Vermont, began the proceedings. Mr. Barrett, your presence today follows the collapse of investor trust in several U.S. banks due to discriminatory practices. You've introduced a transparency framework now widely adopted. But tell us, why now? Leon didn't flinch. Because the excuses are exhausted. A quiet rustle passed through the room. For decades, we treated bias in banking like a PR issue. But discrimination doesn't live in statements, it lives in systems. He leaned forward. Let me be clear, I am not here as a victim. I am here as a product of what happens when the system underestimates the people it was built to exclude. Someone at the back clapped. A gavel tapped the desk. The chair continued. And the Barrett score, how does it solve this? Leon tapped the binder in front of him. The Barrett score isn't a solution, it's a mirror. For the first time, we are measuring service patterns that disproportionately harm Black, brown, low-income, and elderly consumers, and doing it with integrity. Then came the pushback. A senator from Arizona leaned into his mic. Some argue this score could damage small businesses unfairly, that it could be weaponized or misused. Are we opening the door to ethics policing? Leon responded plainly. We've been policing morality for decades. We just called it creditworthiness. Another ripple across the room. When someone's zip code decides whether they get a checking account, or if a single mother gets higher fees because her accent is unfamiliar, that's already weaponized. We're just telling the truth out loud now. Patricia poured coffee as Leon sat alone on the bench. You think they heard you? She asked. He nodded slowly. They heard me. Whether they're ready to act, that's another matter. A pause. Then Patricia looked down at her phone. You just hit 3.6 million views. Live streams trending at #1. Hashtag #SystemNotSorry is exploding. Leon exhaled. That wasn't for them. That was for every kid who got laughed out of a loan meeting with a dream in their backpack. The hearing made headlines in every major outlet. One clip in particular hit a nerve, where Leon said, "Dignity is not charity, it's currency, and we've been bankrupt in it for far too long." On CNN, a panel of economists, regulators, and a former bank VP debated the line for 10 minutes. The moderator closed with, "Whether you agree with Leon Barrett or not, there's no denying it. A new chapter just started." The Department of Financial Ethics issued a surprise proposal, requiring all FDIC-insured banks to publish public-facing ethics metrics, mandatory review of service disparity by race, age, ZIP, and gender, Barrett score integration by Q3 next year. The industry exploded. Some cheered, others panicked, but no one could ignore it. Mid-sized banks began voluntarily adopting the Barrett score preemptively. Insurance firms started linking premium benefits to an institution's ethics rating. Gen Z investors on Reddit formed the Barrett Fund, pledging to only invest in companies with scores above 85. One high school in Michigan held a debate tournament themed, "Dignity as Economic Leverage." Leon sat at his small wooden kitchen table. No screens, just a notebook. He scribbled a single sentence. The system didn't apologize, but it blinked. Then he closed the notebook. Leon stood at a foldable podium. No tie, no spotlight, just people. Young tech students, old Black women with church fans, 2 tellers from a local bank who wanted to hear for themselves. He wasn't there to impress, just to listen and remind them, this didn't happen because I was brilliant. It happened because you kept receipts, because you told your stories, because you refused to shrink to fit their metrics. Someone shouted from the back, "And because you didn't sit down." Laughter, cheers, and a standing ovation that lasted longer than anything in Congress. It wasn't the law that changed things. It was the silence that followed, and the tension inside boardrooms that used to pretend nothing was wrong. After the hearing, after the media storm, and after the Barrett Compliance Framework Act passed committee review, something rare happened. People stopped talking and started watching. Watching Leon, watching the Barrett score dashboard, watching each other. Because in the corporate world, ethics had just been made quantifiable and public. At Flair's Manhattan office, Leon stood in front of the glass wall overlooking the skyline. He wasn't alone. His data team, his legal team, and now, for the first time, a full compliance audit squad had gathered, not to fix the outside world, to audit themselves first. "If we're going to demand transparency from banks, hotels, and airlines," Leon said, "we have to live it here. Every call, every policy, every customer support resolution. No exceptions." Patricia nodded, flipping open her laptop. "We've already flagged 3 inconsistencies in the way our intake staff handles callers with foreign accents." Leon raised an eyebrow. "Internal score?" 87.2, she said. "Good. Not excellent." Leon didn't smile. He wanted flawless, because the moment they slipped, every critic would pounce. Not because they cared about integrity, but because they feared it. Meanwhile, the bank that started it all, Avery First National, was in full crisis mode. Within 3 weeks, 6 of their 11 top clients had withdrawn funds. Their Barrett score dropped from 78 to 42. 2 state regulators launched investigations into complaint cover-ups from the past 6 years. And worst of all, a leaked internal memo surfaced. It read, "There is no documented policy for identifying which customers receive tiered service upon entry. Decisions made on visual appearance are at the branch manager's discretion." Leon didn't comment on it publicly. He didn't need to. The memo spoke for itself. But that wasn't enough. Because across the country, other institutions were trying to quietly scrub their own records, tweak their scripts, and spin PR campaigns around diversity without changing anything real. So Leon made a decision. It was time to escalate. He called an emergency summit. Not at a hotel, not in DC, but at the New York Public Library, main branch beneath the Marble Lions. Because this wasn't just policy. It was cultural memory. It was architecture, and everyone invited knew. This was the real reckoning. The guest list was unorthodox. CEOs from 3 major banks, 2 student leaders from a community college in Newark, the founder of a fintech app designed for undocumented immigrants, a retired postal worker who once sued her local bank for withholding a check she deposited. And seated in the middle like a quiet storm was Leon Barrett. The first 20 minutes were tense. No one wanted to speak first. Until the postal worker, Ms. Eloise Givens, 72, with thick glasses and a sharper tongue, leaned forward. "You want to know what accountability looks like? I'll tell you." Everyone turned. "I walked into a bank with a check for $9,140 in 1998 from my union retirement account. I got told by a 20-something-year-old teller that it would need 3 weeks to clear because we don't recognize this routing number." She paused. 3 weeks later, it still hadn't cleared. I filed a complaint. They lost the file. No one interrupted her. I watched white customers walk in with handwritten checks and leave with cash in 10 minutes. The banker across from her opened his mouth. She cut him off with a stare. "I don't need your apology. I need your system changed. You hear me?" He nodded and meant it. Leon stood. "Thank you, Ms. Givens. That's why we're here." He clicked his remote. A screen lit up behind him. It was the public-facing Barrett Score dashboard, now expanded across 146 institutions, banks, credit unions, financial tech platforms. Each scored not just on what they reported, but on verified user experiences, anonymized and reviewed by a cross-ethics panel. "This isn't just a number," Leon said. "It's a mirror that reflects what's been invisible for decades." The student from Newark raised her hand. But what happens when someone scores low and refuses to change? Leon didn't hesitate. They lose access, silence, then murmurs. Access to what? Leon clicked again. To institutional capital pools that now require minimum ethics compliance. To ESG investment funds that filter for dignity-based metrics. To state-level financial partnership programs. To everything they once thought was untouchable. It hit them then. This wasn't about shaming. It was about restructuring leverage. That night, after the summit, Leon sat alone outside the building steps. He watched the city lights blink. Patricia walked up beside him, quietly. "That was something," she said. Leon nodded. "I didn't want to humiliate anyone. I just wanted the system to stop pretending." "You think it will?" He looked out into the dark. It already has. The next morning, 3 headlines broke at once. Barclay Dominion Bank announced it would adopt the Barrett score and publish quarterly ethics audits. Trinity Capital froze $240 million of internal lending to institutions with ethics scores below 55. The Office of Financial Consumer Rights opened a hotline for real-time Barrett score dispute reports, powered by Flare. More surprising, a viral clip from the summit hit TikTok. Ms. Eloise Gibbons, leaning forward, glasses sliding down her nose, declaring, "Stop fixing your website, fix your behavior." It was reposted over 1.7 million times. She was invited onto The Daily Show 3 days later. Leon watched the clip from his phone, smiling. Not because it went viral, because the truth didn't need polish anymore. It just needed space to breathe. At Flare HQ, a team member burst into the office. "Leon, you've got to see this." They pulled up a graph. Barrett score submissions had tripled in the past 24 hours. Not from angry customers, from employees, tellers, loan officers, branch managers, insiders who finally had a place to report the gaps they were once ordered to ignore. "This changes everything," Patricia whispered. "No," Leon said. "This reveals everything." And maybe that was the point all along. It wasn't just about punishing bias. It was about creating a world where people had the language, tools, and leverage to make it undeniable. For years, the system had been whispering, "We didn't mean it." Now, the people were shouting, "We measured it." And for the first time, the numbers couldn't lie. Leon Barrett never believed in grand finales. He believed in quiet shifts, in patterns, in the kind of change that doesn't scream. It stays. And that's exactly what had begun to happen. 6 months after the bank incident, the world hadn't become perfect, but it had noticed. Barrett scores were now printed on the digital front page of dozens of banking apps. Customers started asking more than, "What's your rate?" They were asking, "What's your ethics score? How do you treat people like my mother? Why did your score drop last quarter?" And that pressure, it stuck. Because when your dignity is tied to data, silence stops being an option. Leon sat across from a crowd of 200 at the Harvard Kennedy School, where he'd been invited to give a guest lecture on ethics and systems reform. He didn't use a slideshow, just his voice. "This isn't about me. It never was. I just happened to be the man they tried to ignore in a building I helped build." Laughter. But beneath the humor, the truth landed hard. We've confused politeness with progress for too long. But progress isn't polite. It's persistent. It calls out. It digs deep. It disrupts paychecks. And when it's real, it scares people in suits who thought no one was watching. A standing ovation. Students stayed behind afterward. Not for selfies, but to ask real questions. How do I start something like Flare? What if my company doesn't listen? Can ethics even survive capitalism? He smiled. It's not about surviving it. It's about rewiring it. Back in New York, something remarkable was happening. The New York Financial Chamber had officially voted to mandate ethics scoring for all member institutions, not just banks, credit firms, private lenders, mortgage aggregators. And at the top of their ethics framework, the Barrett Index, now federally endorsed. Leon didn't post about it, didn't do interviews. He let the score do the speaking, because that was the plan all along. To build something unshakable, even if they tried to erase him. On a rainy Monday, Leon walked into the same Avery First National Bank that had once denied him service. He didn't come for revenge. He came to check his grandmother's old savings account, which had never been closed. He brought the original passbook with her name written in faded cursive, Ruth Ellen Barrett. The moment he stepped inside, everything stopped. A young black teller looked up, eyes widening. "Mr. Barrett?" Leon nodded. "Just here to access my grandmother's legacy. No special treatment." The teller paused, then walked around the desk and quietly said, "We trained for this moment." Leon raised an eyebrow. "We trained for the day you might come back, for how to serve you, with actual respect. Not because of who you are, but because we failed last time." Leon looked at the young man, no older than 25, and saw hope in his posture. "I'm not here for an apology," Leon said. "I'm here for a deposit." The teller smiled. "Then let's rebuild trust, one receipt at a time." That afternoon, Leon walked the streets of Harlem, not as a CEO, just as a man. He passed a bookstore displaying a poster, "Barrett Score Friendly, all customers, all cards, all dignity." At a corner cafe, a young barista served him a cappuccino and said, "You're hearing? That's the first time I saw someone talk like my dad, but with power behind it." Leon nodded. Sometimes the smallest echoes meant the most. That evening, at a rooftop event celebrating the launch of Flair's Youth Financial Justice Fellowship, Patricia raised a toast. "To the man who didn't just crash the system," she said, lifting her glass, "but taught it to measure itself and finally listen." Leon chuckled, a little uncomfortable with the spotlight, but for once, he let it land. Later, alone in his office, Leon pulled out the same notebook he scribbled in after the hearing. He flipped past pages of quotes, ideas, raw pain, early drafts of the score formula. Then he wrote, "Justice isn't loud, it's consistent. And beneath it, we don't need seats at the table. We own the ledger now." He closed the book and looked out the window. Below, the lights of Manhattan glowed. Above, the night was quiet. And in that quiet, Leon smiled. Because dignity? It had finally gone mainstream, and this time, it had receipts. "Mr. Barrett, we've just been informed. It's official." Leon paused. "What's official?" Patricia's voice over the line was calm but tight, like someone holding back a storm. "The Treasury just published the final list. It's happening, Leon. The Barrett score is now a federal standard." He didn't respond immediately. Not because he was surprised. He wasn't. He had seen the signs. He had read the reports, sat through hearings, reviewed drafts of legislation. But hearing it aloud, spoken like fact, hit differently. After decades of systemic denial, quiet humiliation, and soft-spoken sabotage, the rules had finally changed. And they had changed in his language. The score they once mocked had become the gold standard. By the end of the day, 46 banks were required to submit their first real-time ethics transparency reports through the Federal Barrett Integration System. Every transaction, rejection, customer complaint, all now indexed against equity benchmarks that Leon himself had written. But the shift wasn't just technical, it was cultural. News anchors were calling it a financial civil rights moment. TikTok creators were explaining Barrett logic in under 30 seconds. One school district in Atlanta had just added a new module to their economics class, Dignity and Data, the Barrett Framework. Leon stood on the 58th floor of Flair headquarters and watched the sunset bleed across New York. "You really did it," Patricia said, appearing beside him. Leon didn't look over. He just exhaled and whispered, "We did it." 3 days later, he received an invitation. It wasn't public. It came through a courier envelope, unmarked except for a wax seal with the emblem of the Department of Justice. Inside, Private Roundtable, National Ethics Consortium. Request for Foundational Advisor Presence. It wasn't just about finance anymore. This was broader. Healthcare, transportation, hospitality, education. Every sector that touched human dignity was now looking to install real-time ethics metrics, and they wanted Leon in the room. When Leon walked into the conference hall in DC, it wasn't red carpets and cameras. It was whiteboards, silence, black coffee, and urgency. A senator from Oregon leaned over and whispered, "We've been waiting for this for 40 years. Leon replied without smiling, "You've had 40 years. Now we audit." The conversations were practical. How to verify anonymous whistleblower data. How to score behavioral bias without triggering lawsuits. How to balance transparency with corporate viability. And most importantly, what does ethical accountability look like when there's no one watching? Leon said quietly, "The same as when they are, or it's not real." After the meeting, a young Latina woman approached him in the hallway. She worked in education policy. "I read about what happened to you in that bank," she said. "My grandmother's bank denied her a loan in 1974 and said it was for her own protection." Leon looked her in the eyes. "And now?" "She passed," the woman replied. "But I'm here now, and I'm building policy with your metrics in it." Leon didn't respond with words. He just nodded and tapped the side of his temple. Memory matters. Back in New York, a crisis was brewing. 2 regional banks, once considered progressive, were caught manipulating their Barrett submissions. They had created internal ghost accounts to simulate equity, onboarding fake clients of color to artificially raise their service stats. It backfired spectacularly. When the Flare compliance algorithm flagged inconsistencies, Leon didn't respond with outrage. He responded with data. A public report exposed not just the deception, but the entire internal culture behind it. Emails, memos, strategy docs. One line in particular went viral. "We don't need to fix how we treat black clients. We just need to treat a few better for the optics." The fallout was instant. 620 million in investments withdrawn. 17. Institutional partnerships terminated. The CEO forced to resign on live television. And most damning, their Barrett score permanently suspended from public trust rankings. Leon issued one statement: "Ethics isn't branding, it's behavior, and behavior is a choice." The ripple effect was electric. Suddenly, banks and corporations weren't just afraid of lawsuits, they were afraid of scores. Because scores were public. Scores could trend. Scores could stick to your name longer than any settlement. Parents began checking school district ethics scores. Job seekers filtered company ratings by employee dignity benchmarks. Even dating apps began including Barrett-aligned workplace filters. Leon laughed when he saw that one. "That's wild," Patricia said. Leon nodded. Love and labor, same metrics now. That same week, Leon received another letter. This one handwritten, delivered by hand. It was from Ms. Eloise Givens, the retired postal worker who had spoken at his ethics summit. "Dear Mr. Barrett, I just wanted to say thank you. Yesterday, I walked into a credit union and they thanked me for being a long-time customer. No microaggressions, no coded language, no, let me talk to my supervisor. Just service. I know the fight's not over, but you cracked the window, and baby, we breathing now. Love, Eloise." Leon kept the letter in his jacket pocket for weeks. At the annual Global Ethics Summit in Geneva, Leon Barrett was presented with the inaugural Civic Metrics Award for Structural Reform. But when he took the stage, he didn't mention the award. He told a story. "When I was 9, I watched my father get rejected for a car loan despite a spotless record. I remember how he straightened his collar, thanked them, walked out. Then I remember how he cried in the parking lot. Just once. Just quiet enough that I almost didn't hear it." Leon paused. "That's the sound that built Flare. That's the moment I stopped believing the system was broken and realized it was built this way. On purpose." The room was silent. "I didn't create the Barrett score for revenge. I created it for recognition, not of me. Of all the people who were told they were imagining the disrespect, who were told to stay calm, who were told to wait, I built a metric because truth deserves a dashboard. The crowd rose as one, not for the man, for the movement. As Leon stepped off stage, a young man handed him a simple folded piece of paper. On it, one sentence. This is what dignity looks like, in data. It wasn't some grand press conference, no stage, no backdrop. Just Leon, standing quietly in the foyer of the first Flair community branch in Brooklyn. He placed his hand on the glass door before stepping in. People inside were already at work, not selling, not pushing products, but helping. A young man in a denim jacket was walking a single mother through her first mortgage options. An elderly woman smiled as she received her new digital account card. No fees, no barriers. And in the far corner, a child was coloring while his father asked about building generational credit. It looked nothing like a bank. That was the point. Patricia approached from behind with a smirk. "You're gonna just stand there or actually walk into the thing you built?" Leon grinned. "I'm soaking it in." She handed him a clipboard, the final list of ethics partners. Across 6 states, 22 community banks had signed on to fully integrate the Barrett score, with real-time customer dignity tracking and transparency audits. That wasn't the future. That was the now. Later that day, Leon sat down for a final interview with a small podcast that had covered his journey since the beginning. The host asked, "If you could go back to the moment you were denied at that bank, would you do anything differently?" Leon paused. "No. That moment exposed more than just one bad employee. It revealed the system's design, and if it hadn't happened, I might have never built the blueprint to fix it." The host leaned in. "What do you want people to remember you for?" Leon looked directly at the mic. "For showing the world that dignity is measurable, that justice isn't just emotional, it can be structured, scored, protected," he added, "and for proving that the best revenge is rebuilding." As the sun dipped behind the skyline, Leon returned to his apartment. He poured himself a cup of tea, sat by the window, and opened the same notebook he'd carried for years. On the final page, he wrote, "They built walls with policies. I built doors with data." He closed the book gently, placed it on the shelf, and smiled. Across the city, dignity had a dashboard now. And thanks to one man's refusal to shrink, the system would never measure people the same way again. If you made it this far, we've got one question for you. Have you ever been denied service somewhere you actually built? Drop your story in the comments. We read every single one. And tell us, do you think dignity can be measured? Or does it always come down to power? Let's talk below.